Thanks for tuning into The Ordinary Filmmaker. I know what you're thinking. Where have you been for the last couple of weeks? Well, where has the news been? There's been absolutely very little coming out. We did have some information about some new lenses, the RF 14 to 35 millimeter and two other lenses, but it really didn't go into details what those other lenses were, and I really don't want to put out a video if there's nothing of any substance. But here, Friday, I've got some substance for you. We've got a date on when Canon is going to announce the Canon EOS R3. That's right. Canon's going to announce, according to Canon Rumor, so thanks to Craig for this one, Canon's going to announce the Canon EOS R3 on June the 29th, 2021. I don't have the time of day, but I'm willing to predict that this is probably going to happen in local Tokyo time, so that probably means around 11 p.m. on June the 29th. Now, I could be completely wrong, and we could get the announcements around 10 o'clock in the morning, but the date is June the 29th. Now, this is shaping up to be an exciting camera. Let's take a look at some of the specifications. There's a couple of firsts in this camera. Now, it is going to be a 30.1 megapixel back illuminated sensor. Now, Sony's been doing this for some time, but this is a first for Canon. Now, this camera isn't supposed to be a replacement for the R1. Now, in many areas, it's going to be better, it's going to be faster, it's going to be more capable than the Canon 1DX Mark III when it comes to sports and fast action photography. And one of the things they talked about is in the autofocus, it's going to be able to track motorcycles and cars in addition to wildlife and people and eye autofocus. So there's a definite improvement there. And sorry, I'm shaking off some of the water. It is raining here. The water is seeping through the cracks in my canopy here, getting some of the gear that isn't water resistant, such as my iPad, the Ninja, and my light here a little bit wet. But I'm going to stick it out because it's still a very nice day. We haven't gotten an awful lot of rain lately. Anyhow, it's back to the specification. So again, this is a back illuminated full frame sensor, and it's 30.1 megapixels. And this is quite a jump up from the 1DX Mark III, which was around 20 megapixels. And not only do we have a jump in resolution, but we also have a jump in the number of frames per second. So in stills, you're looking at 30 frames per second. That's right up there with the Sony Alpha 1. That's quite impressive. Now, I do suspect this is going to be electronic, and I do suspect they've solved the issues with any sort of rolling shutter, because the last thing you want to do is be at the Olympics taking a lot of shots, 30 frames per second, and guess what? Things are a little bit bent, and that doesn't go over very well. Now, so I just lost my information here. This is rather interesting. A drop of water fell on the iPad, touched one of the ads, and it switched. So let's see if I can adjust my position a little bit here so I don't get things wet here. Other specifications that are going to be in the R3 is a multi-controller and smart controller. We're going to have that same flip screen, that variable angle flip screen that you have in the Canon R5, and basically all the R system cameras, which is great. Now, I know some of you disagree with me, but I just can't stand that articulating screen, the two-way or three-way. I like a fully articulating screen. It works really well when I'm doing either stills or video. Now, it's also going to have a new accessory shoe. It will support Wi-Fi 5 gigahertz, but not 6 gigahertz, so no 6E, and 6E is still rather new. And as I mentioned, it is going to be 30 frames per second of the electronic shutter with autofocus and auto exposure, and be able to shoot RAW at this speed. And that's really key. If this was JPEG, I don't even shoot JPEG anymore. I'm the ordinary filmmaker, and on my R5, I shoot RAW to both cards. I'm tired of fighting with JPEG or HEIF, and HEIF is a good format, but the problems I'm having in editing, because it's not fully supported yet, especially on Apple, they're only supporting, what is it, 8-bit? And so if you take a HEIF image, you bring it in, it looks fine in preview, but as soon as you start editing it in any software, your highlights get blown out. It looks absolutely terrible. So I basically defaulted to shooting in RAW all the time, and it gives me an awful lot more freedom, but the files are pretty big. Now, on a 45 megapixel camera that the R5 has, you're looking at about 60 megapixels, 60 megabytes per image, so that's rather huge. All right, now let's take a look at some of the video specs that I know a lot of you are very interested in. Of course, this camera is going to do 4K. It's not going to do 8K. But there's a couple of great things that this camera is going to do. That's the first in a 1 series camera from Canon. It is going to do 4K with C-Log 3, but it's also going to do oversampled 4K. And what I suspect it's going to be able to do is around 6K oversampled 4K, so it's going to be very detailed 4K. And it's going to be able to record internal raw video. That's right, internal to the camera. Well, internal to the card slots. Now this is going to be a hybrid. It's not going to be dual CF Express cards. It's going to have a CF Express card and of course a UHS 2 card. Now, when I started this channel, I wasn't that big on CF Express cards until I got the R5 and I truly understood the power of using these cards. Now, buying CF cards is much like buying a car. There's so many different types. Do you want a card that can go really, really fast so your transfer speeds are really, really crazy? Or do you want to go with something that's a little more affordable with more capacity, but is not as fast, but it's more than fast enough to record 12K video or 30 frames per second with the shutter button or the button held down for about a couple of seconds. And so it does have a CF Express card. It does have an SD card. So for those of you looking for dual cards, you're going to have to wait for the R1, which is supposed to be coming out sometime next year. I hope we do get a development announcement from Canon sometime around October. So hopefully, fingers crossed, everything's up in the air. Look, I went to get fireworks earlier today. I've got to keep my voice down because my wife doesn't like me getting them. I was going to get some fireworks for Canada Day coming up next week. And you know my favorites, the one I got last year? I couldn't get them, and these are simple. It's got a wooden stick. You poke them in the ground. They shoot up about maybe 5-6 feet max with various colors, and they go off for about a good 50 seconds or so. The colors are great. Sound is great, and it's great for the backyard. Your neighbors aren't going to get frustrated. You're not going to burn anything down, and they were around $3 each, so the price was perfect. This year, they don't have them. In fact, their stocks are down. Everything, no matter what you're buying or what I was buying, camera gear, computers, it's all affected. Anyhow, back to the specifications here. Where was I? So I covered off that. Okay, so in terms of IBIS, it is going to have IBIS. It's going to have 8 stops. Let's see if I can get the water off my iPad here. It's really starting to rain here. You can't see it. And here's a secret of movie making. For you to be able to see the rain, it's got to be coming down pretty hard. And yeah, I'm getting soaked here. So 8 stops of coordinated control image stabilization with optical image stabilization, and of course in body. Not much different from the R5. I mentioned about it's going to be able to, the autofocus is going to be able to lock on to motorcycles and cars, so it's going to be able to cover auto sports, which is really terrific. I wonder if it'll cover truck racing too. I imagine, I mean, a truck isn't that much different in terms of looks from a car. I know, I'll probably get comments on that. Speedlight shooting with electronic shutter, the same weather sealing you would expect in a 1D series, and it's going to have the LPE19 battery, not the LPE6N, which shouldn't be any surprise, and of course the dual card slots. But yeah, I still don't have enough information. I'm going to put this down where it's not going to get wet. Well, I hope. As an ordinary filmmaker, I'm not excited by this camera. I think this is a truly terrific camera. If you're a stills photographer and you're shooting fast action an awful lot, I think this is a camera you're going to want to look at, especially if you were interested in the 1DX Mark III or the R1. I think this camera might fit the bill for you. And video specs, I mean, come on, these video specs aren't bad. I mean, how many of us do shoot 8K? And yes, I have started shooting 8K. I really do enjoy shooting 8K. But for a lot of us, oversample 4K, whether it's 6K or 5.8 or anything in between, is going to provide you with a lot of detail in 4K, and it's going to cover you for those situations where, yes, you're getting some really great stills, but you also want to get some video to submit with that. It's going to give you more than enough capability. Of course, raw video, the only option to shoot raw on the R5 is 8K video, and that's one of the reasons when I'm looking at getting my new computer, I'm looking at around 32 to 64 gigabytes, and it's going to be powerful enough that I can easily edit 8K video. Because with the R5, the only way to do raw is through 8K, and I'm thinking of switching over to 8K for some of my videos for future proofing. I just don't know if this new M1 based MacBook Pro or the 30 or 27 or 30 inch equivalent of the current 27 inch all-in-one is going to be sufficient enough, and I just have to wait and see. The R5 is a good camera. The R3 is a good camera. It really is an upgrade over the 1DX Mark III in terms of its stills capabilities, and of course, it's mirrorless, so you're really jumping into that RF. Now, if you're traditionally with DSLRs and you're going to stick with the 1DX Mark III a little longer, I don't blame you for that, but the R system is shaping up pretty good. Now let's take a look at some of the lenses that Canon Rumors had talked about as well. The 24 to 35, no, it's the 14, hold on a minute here, I'm going to take a look here. It's just old man brain. I've been watching this stuff for a long time, and all of a sudden I forget. Oh, the water dripping on it here, this isn't good. Is it the 14 to 35? I'm 24 to 35, which one is it? Scroll down a bit here. Yeah, Samyang has ceased production, sort of. There's an asterisk there. Yeah, 14 to 35. I thought it was like, because I know I was thinking of looking for a lens. I really want a prime 16 millimeter, and there isn't anything out there right now that has really got my attention. I'm waiting to see what Canon does. The 14 to 35 it is an L series. It's not going to be cheap, and I don't see the point of paying for a 14 to 35 when really all I want is a 16 millimeter. It's going to be heavier. And so I'm really holding off and waiting for that lens. And this 14 to 35 is going to be released along with the R3, or announced along with the R3. Just because it's going to be announced on the 29th doesn't mean it's going to be available on the 29th. We don't know availability, but I suspect the availability will be sometime before the Olympics, and pre-ordering to start soon. So in my links down below, I do have a link to pre-order from B&H. And please, if you are looking at buying the R3, use my links to B&H and Amazon, as it really does help support this channel. So the R3 is shaping up to be a really terrific camera, but like you, I'm actually more interested in seeing what other cameras are coming out. The replacement for the RP, a camera that's going to sit between the RP and the R6, which some think to be the EOS R Mark II, but the R is a one-off camera. There isn't going to be a Mark II for that. And of course, there's supposed to be 3 APS-C cameras coming out, with one of them, a high-end one, being announced and possibly released by the end of this year. So a lot of exciting stuff is supposed to be coming out. I haven't put out many videos because really there's been next to nothing in terms of news coming out. And I saw Canon Rumors and a few others, and I thought, well, okay, this looks like, okay, but there's not enough meat on it. Okay, some lenses, great, but what are they? You can't tell me. Then I'm not giving you any value, and I can't give you any analysis because there's no information there. And of course, 4/3 rumors, or 43 rumors, 4/3 rumors, depending on what you want to call it, but a lot of people say it's got to be 4/3 after all. It's based on 4/3 censored cameras. They're saying that the GH6 is going to have, guess what? You better be sitting down for this. Yeah, no, sit down for this. The GH6 is going to have phase detect autofocus. Yeah. I know, I don't believe it either. I want to wait to see if it actually does come out first, because we've heard a lot of rumors, and let's face it, rumors are a lot of fun to talk about, but I wouldn't be making any bets. I wouldn't be making any purchase decisions on rumors. I'd wait for, you know, what they say is buy on rumor, sell on fact, and it's a mining expression for stocks. And, you know, one of the reasons you got to be careful when you buy mining stocks or shorting mining stocks is you never know what they're going to find, if they're going to find anything at all. But enough of that ramble. Let's get back to the topic of hand. And the reason I didn't have a video on that is because, well, there wasn't a lot of validation, or there wasn't any validation. There was no credibility. And to just talk about that one item without an update on the specifications for the GH6, I decided not to put out a video there. Now, we do have the GH5 Mark II, and it still has depth from defocus, contrast detect, autofocus system. Way too many letters there. I mean, if you're releasing the GH6 some 3 or 4 months later, aren't you going to give it the same autofocus system? I mean, you would expect, right? So I don't know. Tell me what you think in the comments section down below. Are you still waiting for the GH6? Have you given up on Panasonic and gone to either Canon or Sony? And what camera are you looking at to get this year? For me, I'm kind of done with the cameras. I've got what I need. I've got plenty of Safe Express cards, plenty of storage, and I have pre-ordered the 100mm, the RF 100mm f2.8 macro. I'm really excited to try that one out. And one last thing, I took my 800mm out again because now Jupiter and Saturn are rising here in the northern hemisphere. You can find them now. It's just over there, over Spring Farm Road. Around midnight they start to show up, and I think it's around 11:30 for, which one's up first? Saturn's up first, the furthest one away is up first, then Jupiter comes up about another half an hour later. And when I was shooting them the last time, I nailed the focus so well, got such great stabilization, that I was able to see the banding of Jupiter, which is really, really terrific. And that's shooting with the 2x extender. But I must have a case of verbal diarrhea here, because I can't seem to stop talking. I mean, I haven't shot a video in how long? It's been almost 2 weeks, guys. It's just, and I kind of got into a sort of, yeah, I'm done with this. There's no information coming out. I guess that's it. But no, I do have plenty in the works. There's this video, obviously, and I've got a couple of items that are being sent to me for review. Now, one of them is an accessory that you connect up to your computer, and it functions, think of it like a trackpad, but with dials and buttons and wheels to help you do some more fine-tuning. It works really great with nonlinear editors like DaVinci Resolve, Premiere, Final Cut, but it also works with browsers or other photo editing software. Just imagine being able to change the brush size by just rotating a dial. And I think that, in combination with a trackpad, really can be a time saver. So that video will be coming out within the next 2 weeks. And I'm being sent some other wonderful things too. So whether news is coming out or not, I do have some review videos coming out that might be of interest to you. But that's it for now. I do thank you so much for watching The Ordinary Filmmaker. If you're looking at purchasing any camera gear, please use my affiliate links down below, as they do help support the channel. And I am still giving away the R5, just not mentioning it in any video. The link is down below. I'm also still giving away the Angelbird 2 V90 SD cards along with the Ulanzi LED light package, again in the description down below. But that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching. Have yourself a good weekend, and for those of us in North America, well, Canada and the United States, I hope you have a good long weekend next weekend, assuming I don't put any news out in between. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you again soon.